We had been waiting for this call for a long time. I personally had been impatiently waiting for it. Having watched the activities in Ulster and the foundation of the Irish Volunteers and the gun running and all that military preparation there, I went, I could say almost daily, to Tom Clark and Sean McDermott and said, when in the name of God are we going to start? And Tom Clark was always, he was keen as anybody in Ireland could be, to see that volunteers would be started in the south. But he would caution me and say to me, now be patient. Arrangements are being made, all steps are being taken, and we'll have our men. Thanks be to God, these fellows in the north have started. They've shown us good example, and we'll be on their heels shortly. That night then, there was great excitement. For days before, from the announcement of the call for the meeting by John McNeill. John McNeill was a very respected person in the Irish Ireland movement at that time. I never knew what politics he had, if he had any. He was a Gaelic leaguer to me. Whether he had politics, he had evidently, but he didn't expose his hand very much, his mind on political matters. But that night was a scene of terrible excitement in and around the Rotunda and the Rotunda Gardens. The building where the meeting was held was the rink, in the skating rink in the Rotunda Gardens.
You were speaking next door, Mr. Kelly, isn't that right?
I was on the platform. I was invited by McNeill to be one of the speakers that night, and I was on the platform. And the crowds turned up in such numbers, evidently surprised McNeill that such enormous numbers came to the meeting. The building held, I was told, about perhaps 4,000 people. But it was packed, and there was an overflow. Big crowds outside, struggling to get in. And McNeill, somebody brought this word to McNeill, and he said, called me by name up to him, and he said, would you go in and take over the large concert hall and hold an overflow meeting there? I'll send you in speakers. So I went into the ancient concert hall and was chairman and addressed the gathering until I could get somebody else, a relief person to
take over
for a long time to take over.
Do you remember what the atmosphere was in that hall and what the sort of thing you said?
Oh, there was the greatest excitement and enthusiasm for the Irish foundation of the Irish Volunteers. We all had the feeling that this was an historic occasion. This was something that was new. There hadn't been Irish volunteers for nearly 150 years, and this was something new. And the young men who would come in great numbers into the IRB in the years from the time of the 98 celebrations. Then there was a revival of the IRB and the militaristic mind. And they were very much enthused, of course, to see that their idea now about a military fight for Ireland, a fight with arms to free Ireland. They weren't home rulers.
Mr. Kelly, how was there such a response to this call for this meeting when you had so little means of publicising it?
Well, you see, the North had given the example, and everybody in the South they were all in favour of Home Rule. But they saw the danger that the fellows in the north, the Orange men of the north, and the Tories and Conservatives, they were getting away with the propaganda. And they were fierce opponents of Home Rule, and the Liberal government didn't appear to be taking serious notice of the really serious opposition that there was in the north. And in the south, we thought that it was time that we stood up to defend. Our attitude was in the south, well, if we're going to have Home Rule, if we're going to get it ever, we must show that we are prepared to fight for it. That was the attitude. That was the feeling.
You didn't think that the movement up to then, the Redmond type of movement, constitutional type of movement, was getting anywhere fast enough?
Well, they were getting they were on the road to the Home Rule, but the other, the opposition in the north seemed to be so powerfully backed by the Conservatives in England, and the Liberal government so wobbly and so weak, that we thought that if we showed them that we were prepared to fight too, that it would help to pass the Home Rule Bill and help to stiffen the backs of Asquith, Lloyd George, Winston Churchill and the rest of them, who didn't say a boo to the northern fellows, Carson, led by Carson, who were the dominant people at that time in Ireland.
Did it have